Michael Jordan can talk to you about how to shoot a nasty jump shot. Tiger Woods can teach you how to drive a golf ball 300 yards. Albert Einstein could have spoken to you about the theory of relativity and how it applies. But who can talk to you about the evils of addiction? I reckon only somebody who's been there. I reckon only somebody whose life has been absolutely devastated by the throes of addiction. So as I postulated and hypothesized on who I could possibly bring to you as a guest to talk to you about the evils of addiction, I looked in the mirror and I realized that there would be no one better to portray to you the evils of addiction and the hell that it can serve to your life than yours truly. What's up, America? Big Luke here, man of the Free Studios, bringing you Man of the Free, freedom of mind, money, and media. Why are we here today? We are here today to talk about a topic that has plagued me from the day I was born. I didn't know it did. I later found out. And it plagues you, whether you realize it or not. It's in the streets that you walk. It's in the people that you talk to and meet. It's in the world that you live in. And unfortunately, it's in you, whether you know it or not. The majority of you, at least the majority of you willing to admit it. We are here today to discuss addiction. Now, on my show, I only talk to you about the things that I'm well versed in. I only talk to you about subjects that I can shed light on because I've been there or because I've dealt with it. I have gotten past it. I continue to deal with it. Or maybe I'm dealing with it right now. Today's topic happens to be the latter. I'm a drug addict. In a larger format, I'm an addict. And unfortunately, a large percentage of Americans are the same. Now, when we talk about an addict, most people envision a bum on a corner with a cardboard sign that says anything helps, even a little bit, thank you, God bless. Some people imagine a rock star backstage behind the velvet curtain with a tourniquet on and a needle hanging out of their arm. But what most people don't think of is the millionaire businessman in the back of the Mercedes doing a bump out of his pendant necklace before he goes into the business meeting. They don't think about the 40-year-old mother of two who's slamming a half a bottle of Smirnoff before their children get home off the bus. They're not thinking about the politician who just gets done passing legislation that affects all of our lives and futures, and then goes to the local watering hole to start with a Chardonnay, move to a snake bite, and then end up in a cocaine den for the rest of the evening. But this is fucking real, ladies and gentlemen. This is the world that we live in. It's plagued with addiction every day in and day out, whether you like it or not. So I'm here today to educate you about addiction. What is addiction? Who is addicted? What are they addicted to? How can we fix it? How do we spot it? These are all things that we're going to cover today. And as of right now, we're going to dig right in. I'm going to start with a story, as I usually do, how it affects my life or how it has. I'm going to tell you about when I started to realize that I was an addict. I started to realize that I was different than normal. For those of you watching, I just held up air quotes. So I was about 19 years old, and I really, really wanted to become an officer of the law. When I was younger in high school, I had sworn that I was going to attend college, play football, and pursue a degree in criminal justice. It was kind of a 50-50 thing where I came from. It was either like doctor, veterinarian, lawyer, 50%. The other half went into criminal justice, okay? We were from a blue-collar town, and we all wanted to become cops. Figured I would be a detective, a gun-slinging problem solver, a hero of the free world, pursuer of peace, and catcher of bad guys. So I took the civil service exam. I was working at a dealership selling cars at the time. I had lost my scholarship to play football because of a shoulder injury, which still plagues me to this day. So I took the civil service exam, knowing that if I did well, I would be canvassed by several law enforcement agencies close by. I couldn't tell you exactly what the grade was, but it was mid-90s. I did very, very well. I got canvassed by some of the highest paying precincts within 25 miles of where I lived. So why am I not a police officer? Why did I not become a cop? Well, of these canvas letters I got, there was Town of Manlius. That was the highest paying, but it was kind of a high dollar area. I felt like it wouldn't be full of action. I got canvassed by Onondaga County, but as a sheriff, I would have been the lowest paid police officer around. I got canvassed by several others, but the one that resonated with me was the Syracuse City PD, the good old boys in blue, downtown Syracuse. They saw the action. They were the gunslingers. There was more Syracuse City PD police officers that had discharged their weapons in the line of service than any other precinct that I got canvassed by. That, to me, that was law enforcement, shooting the bad guys. So I accepted their canvass letter. I went to an auditorium at a high school, whether it was Fowler or Henninger, I don't remember, and it's not important. But I walked into an auditorium. It was an evening during the week, and there was an auditorium full of people. And I looked around and I saw guys and girls much like me. There was black, brown, white, male, female, red-haired, black-haired, blonde-haired, no-haired. It was all different types of people from all walks of life. And I thought to myself, yeah, man, anybody can get it. Anybody wants to be a cop. This is going to be some steep competition. So they handed out another test or a quiz. And they told us this wasn't pass or fail, but it would help them determine who would be suitable for which position and whether or not they'd be good for a job in law enforcement. So I answered the questions. There were some interesting questions. There were what I felt were some very common sense questions. There were some just plain easy questions. And then there were some questions that really required a little bit of critical thinking. But I did very well on that. So well, in fact, that I was one of the first names to be called to the second round of this critiquing. I was called into a cafeteria to sit at a table, and they were spaced out about every 2 or 3 tables. There was a detective that was sitting with the potential cadet. So I sat with this detective, nice guy, and he started to ask me a series of questions. Questions like, how old are you? Where did you grow up? Was anybody in your family in law enforcement? Are you a virgin? Have you ever killed anybody? Have you ever raped a woman? What were your grades like in high school? Have you ever molested a farm animal? It was an interesting series of questions, but I was very capable of answering them with simple, concise answers because I knew them and I knew the answers I was giving were what they wanted to hear. Until we got to one question. And that question was, have you ever used drugs? I paused for a moment and I looked at the gentleman asking me the questions and I said, detective, when you say drugs, he said, boy, we all smoke a little weed every once in a while. Not worried about that. I'm worried about hard drugs, crack, cocaine, heroin. You ever done any of that? And I thought back to a party when I was younger, and some of the party goers had brought out a little baggie and it had a white powdered substance in it, which I later found out was a crushed up Tylenol they were selling for $20. And they took a little bit out and put it on the counter and told me to sniff it. So I looked at it and I said, is that Coke? They said, yeah. So I took it up the nose. Didn't do a damn thing for me. But this guy was asking me a question and I thought, hell, if I'm going to be a cop, if I'm going to pursue a career in law enforcement, I better tell the truth. Because if these guys want anything, they want honesty. They want integrity. They want somebody who's going to tell it like it is. So I looked the man in his eyes and I said, well, I was at a party one time and I think it may have been cocaine. They brought out a baggie. I did a sniff. It was one time, one shot deal. I felt guilty after I did it. I never did it again. And to be honest with you, it didn't affect me in any way. So I don't even think there was a drug. He said, stop right there. Turn around, young man. See that sign that says exit? I said, yes, sir. He said, good. That door is for you. It swings one way. Have a nice day. I said, but wait a minute, man. I got a 90-something on my civil service exam. I'm the most in shape human being in this place. I'm a champion track athlete. I can shoot a marble off the top of a glass bottle and not break the glass from 40 yards. You're telling me you don't want me to be a cop? He said, boy, we don't want drug addicts in our force. It was in that moment that I realized that because of a decision that I had made, that society may not want me. It was in that moment that I realized that because I was being paired with that word, that addict word, that I had become somebody different. My years of high honor roll my years in the Odyssey of the Mind competition at my school, my years of gifted and talented program in my high school and in my middle school, my trips to American Legion Boys State as a future leader of America, the fact that I became the lieutenant governor of that same said Boys State, the fact that I was in the leadership program, I was the captain of my football team, and I could shoot a fucking target like nobody else. Those are the things I thought they would want. Had I known, they'll take a fat, out of shape, dishonest drug addict. Well, shit, I would have just lied. So that taught me something, ladies and gentlemen. That taught me that honesty isn't always the best policy, because later on, I was pulled over by a young man that I knew to be a drug addict, a young man that I knew was a thief, a young man that I knew was not a savory human being. And he pulled me over in the city of Syracuse. I looked at him and said, is this a fucking joke? He says, what are you talking about? I said, you got hired by the city of Syracuse PD. He goes, yeah. I said, dude, you put more fucking candy up your nose than Keith Richards in his heyday. How the fuck did they get you? He said, bro, I just lied. I said, wasn't there a polygraph? He goes, yeah, I lied on that too. There's an acceptable margin of error. You can get a few wrong. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Boy, was I naive. And there's some of you out there laughing, going, dumb son of a bitch, you should have just lied. You'd have made a great cop. Everything happens for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. But that was a lesson I learned at that time, that society doesn't always value honesty, okay? And there's going to be situations where maybe a little white lie will get you to the next level. But at that point in my life, not for me. I had integrity. I wanted to be squeaky clean. So what did that do for me? Well, having a detective tell you that you're not wanted, that regardless of the fact that you have been spotless your whole life, that one questionable decision eliminated your chances of doing what you planned to do for the rest of your life. My dreams were crushed. So you start to get an idea. You start to get some insight into how addiction entered my life. What is addiction? People say addiction is smoking weed. Addiction is snorting coke, shooting heroin, doing pills. Well, yes, addicts do those things, but that's not what addiction is, okay? Addiction is somebody who undertakes a ritual or a behavior that provides them a sense of relief from a void in their life, a lack of something, an emptiness or a loneliness. Something's missing in the life of an addict. And their ritual is what they use to fill that void. Now, a large majority of those people are chemical and substance abuse addicts, alcoholics, drug users, illicit substance users. Somebody who gets a prescription for OxyContin for their back pain, and it's gone 12 days in. And they got to buy pills for the other 18 until they hit their 30-day mark and they can renew their prescription, okay? An addict is somebody who gets out of work, goes to the local watering hole, and when everybody has one, chit-chats for a half an hour, and then heads home. When everybody walks out the door, the addict then orders the shot, and then the beer to chase it with, and then so on and so forth until they're blind drunk. Hopefully they make their way home safely. But for that period of hours, whatever has plagued them, whatever has made them sad, is gone. It's relief. Addicts find a ritual, a behavior, or a substance that provides them relief. That's what an addict is. Now, mind blown? Thought to yourself, no, an addict is somebody who hides in the closet and sniffs oxys. An addict is somebody who skips out on work because they're banging dope. An addict is somebody who sneaks around and steals things and goes to the pawn shop and boosts DVDs from Walmart so they can score their heroin bags. That's what an addict is. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the misconception of the addict, how the addict is misunderstood, that is exactly why, to this day, after all these years, with all these scientists and all these people, we have yet to solve the fucking problem. Let's talk about the 20th century. Let's talk about science. Throughout the large part of the 20th century, scientists have tried to tackle addiction. They've tried to figure out what it is that makes the addict do what the addict does. They have done studies. They have done blind studies. They have done studies with test subjects. Moment, please. I need a drink of water. And in doing so, all of these studies have led them to the conclusion that follows. When a substance is introduced to somebody, to a subject, and they then enjoy the substance because of a genetic predisposition to enjoy the substance, you have an addict. An addict is born. Okay? To simplify that, what the science has told us and what the papers and the thesis and the endless studies have told us is that an addict does not become an addict until they try the drug. You have somebody who is otherwise perfectly normal, living their life day to day, doing what they do, until that one fateful day at a party when the peer pressure gets them to try heroin. And then the addict is cultivated. The drug reaches inside the soul of the addict and plucks the guitar string that hits the note just right, that pulls that demon that's dormant inside that human being out. And someone who was always bound to be an addict is now an addict because they found their drug. This has been the accepted understanding of the drug addict for as long as I can remember. So what does society do with this addict? When the addict gets caught because the behavior that they display as they're trying to continue to get that drug that they so love lands them in jail, well, we lock them away. We throw away the key. We put them in jails. We put them in institutions. We put them in work programs. They are outcasts. They become the looked down upon and downtrodden members of society. They become the others. Well, you're a drug addict. And they'll start to embrace that persona. Somebody who never once had a tattoo will all of a sudden tattoo their face and their hands because, well, what the fuck? I'm an addict now. I may as well embrace it. I always thought face tattoos were cool. Now that I know I'm never going to have an office job, now because I'm a felon, I can never hold public office. Now that society doesn't want me, I'll do what the fuck I'm going to do. Fuck them. And not only do we get somebody who's hurt, who feels betrayed by society, and begins to introvert and damage themselves, their skin, their face, their life, their livelihood, their health, their exercise, their diet, they start to portray outward behaviors that are damaging to society as well. Do you think the addict that thinks that you despise them is going to try to avoid the puddle so they don't splash on you? Do you think the addict who thinks you despise them and you walk by without putting change in their cup, do you think they're going to then speak up and let you know when the car's coming by that could potentially hit your child? No. There's a wedge driven down between these two members of society, the normal person and the addict. The addict is the outcast. Society makes sure that the addict understands they're the outcast. We attack them with things like interventions, jail time, prison time. They're the outcast. We don't want them, right? So you may say to yourself, well, Big Luke, what the fuck, man? Is it the fact that you're an addict? You're now just granting, leeway to these people. They've made mistakes. They've done the wrong things. They're fucking drug addicts. And you're taking a pity position on them? Is it because you are one, Luke? Have we found your soft spot? Is this where Big Luke, the man of the free, goes weak? No, quite the contrary, ladies and gentlemen. This is where Big Luke educates you, okay? Because I've lived on both sides of the fence. Now let's go back to the science, okay? There was a scientist, and I'm going to revert to my laptop here because my memory ain't what it used to be. Must be the drug usage. Bruce Alexander. He was a professor from Vancouver, Canada. Bruce Alexander decided that he didn't quite jive with this understanding, this mid-20th century understanding of what addiction was. He didn't believe this to be so because it wasn't quite logical. There were facets of this argument that were illogical. They did not follow a logical sequence, one of which he found quite, stimulating, quite interesting. One of the studies by which they used to define an addict and the behavior of an addict involved an aquarium, about 50 gallons, about the size of maybe half a twin-size bed and a little shorter. They put a rat in this aquarium. They put a food tray and some bedding, kind of like a jail cell with a bed and some food. In one side of the aquarium, they put a water bottle. In the other side of the aquarium, mirror image, same water bottle. But in one of these water bottles that were both full of water, they dripped dope, heroin, morphine, an opiate substance. They infused the water on one side of the tank with drugs to see what the rat would do. Now, as the days went by, this rat would drink from the water bottle. Later in the day, maybe from the drug-infused water bottle. Then back to the water bottle and back to the dope bottle and so on and so forth until the next day, first thing in the morning, the rat returned to the dope bottle. Then back to the dope bottle. Then again to the dope bottle. Then later in the day, maybe some water. Maybe take a break. The buzz wear off. But as the evening rolled in and the rat lost its buzz, it went back to the dope. Until eventually this rat hit the dope bottle all day, every couple hours, then every hour, then every half hour, then every 15 minutes, then every 5, until the rat overdosed and died in the aquarium. So, hypothesis complete. The scientists drew the conclusion that when the stimulus enters the environment and the rat has access to the drug, that drug addict rat is going to choose the drug every single time. Well, Bruce Alexander said, this empty tank does not emulate environment. It's not the world. The world is not a giant glass cage with no other stimulus. So what Dr. Alexander did from Vancouver was quite the opposite. Dr. Alexander made an even larger environment. And in this environment, he put the same 2 bottles, the same bedding, the same food, but he also added a running wheel. He also added an exercise area. He also added visual stimulation, television. He also added olfactory stimulation, smells. He added a breeze. He added soothing music in certain areas. He also added female rats. Now, I'm taking some liberties here. Okay, I'm not reading from the pages. So if it was record player, not music, if it was a woman singing, not record player, if it was, not smells, my point is he created a fucking rat paradise, okay? Not only was this rat not in a sewer or in a goddamn empty aquarium anymore, he was in an environment full of stimulation. This environment fostered ways for the rat to learn, ways for the rat to feel compassion, ways for the rat to feel comfortable, furthermore, for the rat to feel freedom and not loneliness. Mind you, he put the same 2 water bottles in, the dope water bottle and the water bottle. The rat drank from the dope bottle. The rat drank from the water bottle. After 2 or 3 tries, the rat was so busy interacting with the environment, which included other female rats and other less threatening male rats. The rat never returned to the dope water bottle. There was 0 instance of overdose. There was 0 instance of character traits of addiction being portrayed. There was 0 instance of crime or what would emulate crime or death. 0. That's a pretty strong figure, ladies and gentlemen. In the previous experiments, half the rats died. You put a rat in an empty aquarium with dope, you get half the rats dead. You create a stimulating environment, you drop a rat in, they survive, and not only survive, but they flourish every single time. So what does this mean? It means that our traditional understanding of what addiction is fucking wrong. Dead wrong. And it's not like we just decided we didn't like and we wanted to discard the old thinking. Scientists have proven time and time again that this theory is accurate, that Dr. Alexander's theory is 100% accurate, okay? And now, in the present day, many people are advocating that addicts no longer be outcast, that addicts no longer be jailed, that addicts no longer be looked down upon by society. Rather, they believe that addicts should be treated with compassion. They should be treated with open arms and loves. Because what did we say in the beginning of this show? They've got a hole, an emptiness, a void that they're trying to fill. So what do? Do we throw stones at them, call them names, kick them away, send them off to jail, tell them to figure it the fuck out? Meanwhile, knowing full well that this void exists and never making any attempt to fill it? Or do we do the obvious logical thing and fill the goddamn void? Now, I have personal firsthand experience with this, ladies and gentlemen, and I can tell you this. I was put in an environment with lots of drugs early in my life, tons of drugs. Sadly, looking back on it, really, the access that I had to chemicals. But I didn't use them. I had no desire. I had love, I had stimulation, I had fun, I had athletics, I had friends. I had a great environment. I never had a desire. I looked at those people as, those are the nasty junkies, man. I don't want to end up like them. It wasn't until divorce, my sister taken off to school, parents arguing, parents not showing up home, coming downstairs to open my Christmas presents with mom and dad, and mom was gone. Mom took off. There was a letter, not from Santa, from mom, a Dear John letter, okay? Now, this isn't a pity session. This is helping you understand why I have authority to speak on this, why I have authority to have an opinion on the accuracy of some of these statements. It's because I've been through it. And in retrospect now, reflecting on my life, the times that I headed down the path of addiction and I started to seek out relief from my void or my emptiness, when I became addicted, was when I was doing exactly that. I was looking for relief. I wanted to be numb. I didn't want to think about the emptiness in my life. I didn't want to think about what I lacked. I didn't want to think about all the things that the normal people had that no longer were a part of my life. I didn't want to come to grips with it. I wanted to be numb. I wanted relief. So you say to yourself, well, that's great, Luke. It's a beautiful thought, paradise rat environment, okay? But it's not real. There's no real world evidence that this actually works. Taking a bunch of rats and giving them cheese and pretty sexy rats and red lipstick and wheels to run on. Meanwhile, there's 2 water bottles close by, one with dope, one without. This does not emulate any sort of societal implication, man. You lost me. Did I now? Let's talk about Portugal in the year 2000. Portugal was overrun with addiction. Opiates, dope, amphetamines. It was everywhere. At one point, the statistics were 50%, kind of like the rats. 50% of Portugal's population around the year 2000, and again, I'm paraphrasing, guys, chronology here. This is not exactly cited. This is general concept, okay? But it's accurate. I might be off by a year or two. Half their society was addicted to dope. Crime was rampant. The crime rates were like nothing you'd ever seen before, okay? People were dying. People were getting raped. Their houses were getting pillaged. Looting was happening. People were sleeping under bridges. There were tent cities. It was just overrun with drugs and violence. And the leaders, the legislators, they had no idea what to do. See, they had adopted Western ways. Like much of the world, the United States is in the forefront. We are a leader. So they said, you've got the war on drugs, you've got the Food and Drug Administration, you've got the Drug Enforcement Agency, you've got all these alcohol, tobacco, firearms, all these agencies, all these acronyms, all these tax dollars that are allocated in the United States to solve this problem. Surely they must be on the forefront. Surely they must have the answer. So we will repeat what they're doing. We will emulate their behaviors. Our policies, our legislation, our government will do exactly what they do. I'm thirsty. If you're listening, I'm drinking water, alkaline water. It's delicious, and it settles my tummy. Must be all those years of taking pills with all that Tylenol, Ruben. So Portugal said, we're going to do what the West does. And their crime rates continued to rise. And their overdose deaths continued to rise. And their streets continued to be full of syringes and feces and hookers and disease. Until eventually, the leaders of Portugal said, you know what? What the hell have we got to lose? Let's try something different. Let's take every tax dollar that we currently allocate to the war on drugs, to jailing and incarcerating addicts and feeding them while they're incarcerated and providing them health care while they're incarcerated and keeping them incarcerated and employing the corrections officers and all the additional resources that we need, which were billions to house these offenders. Better yet, let's take those billions and billions of dollars and let's do this. Let's try something different. Let's let them out. Let's vet them for sanity. Let's weed out the rapists and murderers who are also addicts. Let's take the people who are just guilty of larcenies and harassment and obstructing governmental administration and maybe disorderly conduct, harassment. The people who are obviously committing these crimes because they are under the blanket of a chemical substance. They're acting out of pocket because they're high. Let's take those people. Let's create an environment that fosters healing. Let's go to employers and small businesses and let's say, hey, listen, man, if you employ one of these addicts that we're trying to reintroduce into society, that we're trying to help become tax-paying, participating members of society, I tell you what, man, you employ one of these people, we will pay their paycheck for 24 months, 2 years. Do the hard work that's required to deal with this person who may be a little bit eccentric, maybe, requires a little bit of honing to get them nice and sharp. It's going to be a tough one. It's not going to be an easy process. They will require supervision. They will require a little bit of extra help. But I tell you what, if you do that for us and your fellow Portuguese, we'll pay their whole paycheck. Now, I'm a business owner, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm also a drug addict. If Kathy Hochul, who is the governor of New York State, we'll just say that. If Kathy Hochul were to come to my business and say, Mr. Lunkenheimer, I've got 6 people. They're recovered drug addicts. Statistically, only 4 of them will probably work out. But if you would do me a favor and give an opportunity to all 6, you can work them to death, okay? Within the confines of legality and human compassion, work their hands off. Put them to work. They got to earn it because they're getting a free get out of jail free card because of this. But I'll pay their salary for you. You won't have to spend a penny on compensation insurance, on health care, on unemployment insurance. Just let these people punch in at your establishment and do work, whatever you want them to do. Pull the weeds, paint the fence, roof the building, sell the car, whatever. We'll pay their bill. You won't pay anything. You would watch me fumble through my cup of pens to try to find something that I could write with so I could hurry up and sign that paper before they change their mind. Because I'm dealing with the bullshit anyways. Employees have baggage, man. I'm weeding through 2 numbskulls every 6 months as it is. Why not weed through 2 numbskulls for free, guys? That is a welcome prospect to a business owner. It would be to me. And guess what? It was to the Portuguese business owners as well. They said, hell yeah, bring them in droves. I'll take everyone you got. Now, all of a sudden, you've got a country full of employed ex-drug addicts. Well, guess what they also did? Not everybody wanted to work a 9 to 5. Some of them said, man, part of the reason I use drugs is because I believe I'm meant for more. I don't want to push a broom for 8 hours a day. I don't want to clean a floor or wash a dish. I'd like to maybe create my own landscaping company. I'd like to, Portugal has this problem with these pestilent birds. I'd like to maybe create a pest extermination agency, okay? And get a little truck and drive around and set traps and trap them and free them or maybe hunt them, try to help society that way. I just feel like I'm built for more. So the Portuguese government said, what we should also do? Let's give out microloans. Let's let these addicts apply for small business loans. We'll put them through the same process we put everybody else. We will have to vet them. We'll have to make sure that they're capable. And we'll have to watch the money to make sure it's being put to the appropriate use. But let's give them easy to qualify for small business loans. Let's help them pursue their dream. Man, we know they're using drugs because they got this void. We can help fill the void. We can solve that problem. Let's try it. And they did. And it worked. And in the following 24-month period, make sure you're sitting down, ladies and gentlemen. The crime rate in Portugal and the rate of overdose death dropped by 50. That's not 15. That's 50%. Half. Cut in half. They did it the Western way. They did it the American way. And the problem continued to rise exponentially, as the problem will rise when you're dealing with opiates. It's exponential, just like fentanyl is in this country right now. The adult death rate has sprinted away from peaking at heart attack or car accident, which it has historically been at for as long as time has told, or as long as automobiles and hearts have been around, and has sprinted off to overdose deaths. Well, that should tell you something about the power of that drug. But not in Portugal, ladies and gentlemen. During that time that they implemented this program, Portugal became nearly drug-free. Simply because the people in the places of power decided to think logically. Instead of taking the same old methods, the same old ideas, the same old ways, and trying to implement them with greater force and greater severity and greater punishments and more money, more tax dollars. They said, let's make a change and let's try to actually solve the problem instead of tucking it away in a jail cell to rot, where the society that is the tax-paying citizens will have to continue to pay for this rotting corpse until they die or they get out and are recidivists and come back again. Ladies and gentlemen, they actually tried to solve the problem. Now, Portugal's problem was with opiates and chemicals in general. But it doesn't have to be drugs, guys, okay? Addiction renders itself very evil in many, many formats. You can be addicted to profit. You can be a Wall Street earner. And every day you go in the office and you scratch and claw for another dollar. And you might be worth $7 billion fucking dollars. But if by God, at the end of the next 5 years, you're not worth $10 billion, you're just not good enough. Why is that? Because that addict is trying to fill a void. Whether it's daddy's approval, whether it's the ex-wife who told them their dick was small, whether it's the music teacher who didn't like their snare solo and told them they'd never be good enough, or whether it was the fact they were taken off their mother's breast too early. Ladies and gentlemen, we all got fucking problems. And believe it or not, whether you want to admit it, if I asked you all to think of a time in your life where you felt lonely or you felt empty and you started to display a certain behavior that would be stimulated every time you felt that loneliness or emptiness, and you caught yourself in a pattern of behavior that ended up getting you in a little bit of trouble, or maybe a lot of trouble eventually, at least for a small period of time in your life, all of you would raise your hands if you were honest with yourselves. Now, that doesn't mean all of you are full-blown addicts. That means all of you are human beings. Not all addicts are going to become problems. Some people figure out how to manifest their addictions in a positive way. Yours truly is on that list now. I never used to be. I was a problem in society. Your wife, your kids, you were not safe around me a decade ago. I was a problem. I drove under the influence of drugs. I was chauvinistic and rude to women. I was a thief. And I did such copious amounts of substances that, number one, I would piss you off because there'd be no drugs left for you. But number two, I would become so out of my mind, high on drugs, that I was simply unpredictable. I was unsafe. You could know me from kindergarten, and when I was on the substances that I would put in my body, you would not be able to predict who I would be that night or what I would do, simply because of the level of intoxication. I was not a good person. I had a void to fill. And much like everything I do in my life, I did not fill that void with a little cork. I filled that void by driving a fucking semi through it. Because that's how I behave, guys. That's how I operate. In my life, everything I do is to the absolute extreme. Not one car dealership, 5, and then 25. Not a podcast, a YouTube show, and a social media channel, okay? Not let's try to help a few people, let's try to help the world. Not one sales training class, let's create a revolutionary, industry-leading sales training program. Let's not facilitate this little idea that we have. Let's create an application that I hope gets in the hands of every musician in the United States of America. These are all things I'm working on, guys, and it's because I have only one speed, and that is pedal to the fucking floor. So when I was an addict, I was a dangerous, nefarious, malignant, scary, evil, hurtful, dangerous addict. But as a businessman, I'm highly effective. As somebody with humility who tries to communicate and try to educate, I hope to also be highly effective, and I think I will be. But you must understand it's not just drugs and alcohol, guys. It could be sex, it could be power, it could be food, it could be money. Right now, it's validation. Almost as bad, for lack of a better word, as the epidemic proportions of narcotic addiction in this country, we have an addiction to validation. Anybody ever seen this? Anybody ever seen this angle? For those of you who are watching, I just did duck lips in a selfie and then held the camera directly above my head. So if I had a big fat ass and stomach and hips, no one would ever see it. They would only see my smiling face, my filtered lips, and my cleavage. Because all of you ladies take that picture. Keep it real. Wasn't necessarily talking about you when I said fat ass and stomach, although, you know, the shoe fits. Or the sweatpants. I had to, Ruben. There had to be a little comic relief. Ladies, I love you, okay? Absolutely love you, and I am not perfect. Make fun of me for my receding hairline. Make fun of me for my steroid usage in the past. Make fun of me for my extra lips that I've had since freshman year of high school that I think is part of an injury I sustained from a mouth guard. Somebody made a comment on one of my Facebook posts, it's fatty tissue disease because of steroid usage. Well, I've had them since I was 14, and I wasn't using steroids then, so you're wrong, but whatever. Think what you may. It doesn't really affect me in any way. But boy, are the comments interesting, Ruben. I will say that. All right, let's get back on track. Validation, guys. Social media. A like is like a goddamn heroin hit to you people. You post pictures of your fucking milkshake. What the fuck? Do you know how many people have milkshakes? What is so goddamn important about yours? Okay? Now, your kids, we'd love to see them. We'd love to watch them grow with you. We'd love to watch you tear up as they get on the bus for the first time. That's a beautiful thing. And getting a like on that photo means somebody likes it. It means that they're happy for you. It means that society is happy to validate you for that. But you know what I'd like you to do? I'd like you to go to your Instagram or your Facebook and look at your uploads. Not photos of me, not what people have tagged you in, not what you've put on your reel. I'm talking about your uploads, photos that you have uploaded. And I want you to put it in thumbnail format. And I want you to do it on a PC, not a phone, so you can see everything all at once. And I want you to look at that son of a bitch. And if you see photo after photo after photo after photo after photo of the same turned this way, but that way, wrenched as much as I possibly can to show you my ass in leggings, because that's the only way it looks the way I want it to look, you are an addict. If there's the one picture of you standing like this with your hand doing that thing that girls do, you are an addict. If there's only one picture that you can take that makes your tits look just how you want them to look, and that's 32 out of 60 thumbnails, you are an addict. If you're a man, and the picture is of you doing this, with the phone right at your solar plexus, and your traps, and your delts, and your chest looking just right, and you're looking down because you want to flex your traps at the photo. And 30 out of 40 photos are that. If every gym selfie includes a day where you only felt validated because you were pumped just enough to feel big enough to take the picture, you are a goddamn addict. Now stop looking down at the guy holding the cardboard fucking sign at the end of the on-ramp, because you are no different. Don't play yourself. If I've offended you, I'm not sorry, because you deserve to hear these words. We spend too much time judging other people. We spend too much time making other people feel like shit because we need to feel good. That's why we are where we are as a society, ladies and gentlemen. I promised you I would be real. I didn't promise you were gonna like it. It's time that we wake the fuck up. It's time that we understand the problems that we face on a daily basis. It's time that we stop thinking an addict is somebody who tried weed one time and then has to wake and bake every day. And just because they smoked that little bit of weed, they became a weed addict and it's the weed's fault. No, that person has a void. They have an emptiness that needs to be nurtured and it needs to be filled. And instead of making fun of them, instead of looking down your nose at them, why don't you reach your fucking hand out and ask them if they want to go have coffee with you? If there's anything they want to talk about before they overdose that night because they tried heroin because the weed wasn't doing it anymore. Why don't you take some fucking responsibility for your fellow man? Why don't you stop and realize that there's many things you may be doing on a daily basis that drive other people fucking insane, Karen? The first one to bitch at somebody else because they didn't pay for the other person's coffee. Pay for somebody's fucking coffee if you want to. God bless you. It's a wonderful thing to do. But don't you fucking chastise somebody else because they didn't do the same thing. Maybe they're broke. Maybe they just spent their last $260,000 paying for their child's cancer treatment and transfusions. Maybe they don't have money to buy your fucking coffee, Karen. And who are you to judge? How dare you? What Bible were you written about in where it was said that you could do no wrong? Don't throw stones if you live in a glass house, ladies and gentlemen. We are people. We are all human beings. We all hurt the same way. I'm 6'4", 285 pounds, and I'm awfully fucking strong. I've been told I'm good looking. But I am the most insecure person you will ever meet. I spend countless hours in the gym to hone my physique because no matter what I do, I look in the mirror and I see a pimple-faced, long-armed teenager who they call pizza face and monkey arms. That's part of my void. I'm a pretty intelligent guy, but I gravitate towards people who I know are educated, and I listen to them because I fear that I may not be educated enough to reach the levels of success that I so dearly want to achieve. So my children can have the life that I want them to have. So my spouse can have a bigger diamond, a nicer truck, more land, even though she's told me she doesn't need any of those things. I continue to seek out validation in my life to fill a void. I'm an addict, just like you. The only difference between me and the guy under the bridge, whom I have been, more time than I've been this guy, is that I've been willing to learn, is that I've been willing to get humble and admit that I have a problem. Because when you look around and you see steel bars and stainless steel toilets, and you live amongst people that you really don't want to be living around, and your freedom's been taken from you, you're kind of forced into humility. And that's what it took for me. Nothing else was going to fix me. It had to be that way. But my hope is that it does not have to be that way for you or anybody else. There are certain things in this life, in this world, that we can't do anything about. There are. It's unfortunate. When we are diagnosed with cancer or an incurable disease, we are going to die. Our lifespan will be cut short. There is nothing that we can do about it. If our spouse is hit by oncoming traffic and killed, their life is over. We cannot get them back. There are certain things in this life that we cannot control. Some believe in an afterlife. Some believe in religion. Some have faith. Some do not. One thing that we know for sure is that we have this period of time here in front of us on this earth. So the question is, not only what are you going to do with it, but how are you going to treat the other people that you need to share that time and that space with? Some of you will get wealthy and buy an island and choose not to interact, and that's okay. Because if you have earned that success, you deserve that refuge. But the majority of you will have to interact at some point with people who are the downtrodden members of society, who have the drug problems, who have the alcohol problems, who have the addictions. But let me tell you something about addicts, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I am one. We talk about my accolades. We have my wealth, my businesses, my success. I'm humble, but I have to talk about them so you know I have the authority to speak from where I speak. But I'm an addict. How do I also take 5 vacations a year? How do I also live in a 6,000 square foot house? I'm not going to list them all. I don't want to flex today. I want to stay on this theme. I am one of the downtrodden members of society, but I have fixed and I have righted my wrongs. And I've made progress. I'm not perfect, never will be, but every day I get better. That comes with humility and a desire to grow. But what I'm trying to explain to you is I live a great life. I have knowledge. I help people. So how am I also one of these addicts? How was Heath Ledger an addict? How was an Academy Award winning, one of the best actors to ever walk the face of the earth, how was he also an addict? How was Jim Morrison, one of the most prolific and inventive creators of music, how is he an addict? It takes an educated, smart, normal person to do great things, right? Or does it take some of the most tortured souls on the planet Earth to create that level of beauty? Because sometimes that level of beauty can only be derived from tremendous, tremendous levels of pain. Look at a guy like Elon Musk. Every 8 interviews, he's brought to tears because he's asked about something in his past. He's asked about his near failures. He's asked about other facets of his life that are very painful. His voids, his loneliness, his emptiness. He's an addict. But what is he also? He's also a genius. He is also a creator of the most prolific electric car company, year to date, life to date. He's also a rocket scientist. He's also part of an AI think tank that's creating artificial intelligence technology that will change our lives as we know it. How are these people? How are they addicts? But they're also so incredible. How did Amy Winehouse create beautiful music and die at 27? How did Luke Lunkenheimer spend a decade raping and pillaging the planet Earth? Notice I said the planet Earth, okay? Don't get it twisted. And then become such a successful businessman and mentor. How does he now help so many people? He's a fucking addict. Because I have a theory, ladies and gentlemen. I was taught that celebrities become drug addicts. These wonderful, inventive, creative people create this beautiful art, and then because they then get introduced to a drug, it takes them down. You took this beautiful person, you took Nikki Sixx, the best bass player ever, the badass Motley Crue bad boy. Somebody gave him some China White and fucked up his universe. It's the drug dealer's fault. I have a different theory, and it goes like this. The most creative, inventive, beautiful people in this world are able to be so creative, inventive, and beautiful because they have such a deep pain and emptiness and loneliness, a void inside of them, that they had to create something beautiful and incredible to help them mentally climb their way out and survive. But when other people saw their beauty, saw their creativity, saw what they were able to do, they became famous. And then they got fucking lonely because all people wanted them for was this thing they created, these movies they did, these songs they wrote, these sculptures they built, these products they invented. And they realized that all their relationships were with managers and groupies that didn't love them, that didn't care about them. They wanted to monetize them. Then enters the drug. And the celebrity then uses that drug. The addict then uses that drug. The beautiful human being then uses that drug to fill the void. They've always had it. They did it with their artwork, their creativity. But then they found this drug fills it immediately and gives them a sense of euphoria like they've never felt before. As addicts, we have a romance with our substance or our behavior. When I was using drugs, I would take my Oxycontin. I had a special bottle I kept them in that was painted up all artistically and had little bedazzled gems on it. It's my little love coffin, I called it. And I would put the drugs in there and I would keep it with me. And when the stressors came and life became too much, I would sneak off away from everybody. Where'd Luke go? And I would be in a bathroom crushing up a pill and taking it up my nose or swallowing it with a full throttle energy drink because I would then get a caffeine buzz on my way to my high. I didn't need a girlfriend. I had my romance. And as addicts, we have a romance with our chemical or our behavior. Because much like the people who find their other half in life, their partner whom they love, that fills the void for them, our relief, our substance, our behavior as addicts, that fills our void. So that's who we have our romance with. And until you find something to fill that void for the addict in your life, or yourself if it's you, until you find something healthy to fill that void, like love, compassion, or a goal, you will always turn to that same behavior to satiate that need for fulfillment. I hope that I have opened your eyes today. I hope that you've allowed me to speak on the terrors of my past and the things that humble me daily and the mistakes that I have made. And I hope you've benefited from the research that I've done and the understanding that I've adapted about the reality of addiction. I hope I have helped you today in some way, whether you are the addict, whether you want to help the addict, or if just simply enough you want to become better and understand the addict. But have compassion. Have love in your hearts. Stay respectful. Stay understanding. Stay learning. But most importantly, stay free.